Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello. In this video, we will look at the concept of industrial ecology. It's quite possible that you have heard of this concept before. In this video, I'll explain the concept and again give you two examples of application of industrial ecology. So we have previously looked at the concept of biomimicry, where the idea was to look at a design from nature and adapt that design for our use. The concept of industrial ecology is related more to the way nature functions, not specifically the design, but the way it functions. And one of the key features of nature which industrial ecology uses is the fact that nature does not generate any waste. If you look at nature, there is no strict waste as such. Waste of one organism is a resource for another organism. And that is true anywhere you look in nature. There is no real waste. Everything that is generated as a waste for a particular species or an organism is used by another organism. So the idea is, can we actually adapt that for industrial applications? So can we use this feature and develop industrial sectors where waste from one industry is used as a resource by another industry? So that is essentially the concept of industrial ecology. The idea is to connect multiple industries where waste generated by one industry is used up as a resource by another industry. Now there are several benefits of doing this. First, obviously, the industry which is generating the waste will save on the waste treatment. So let's say you are generating wastewater, or you are generating some kind of a pollutant or waste stream. If there is no connection based on industrial ecology, the waste will have to be treated and disposed of in a safe manner. But if the waste is being taken up by another industry, you save on the waste treatment cost. So that is one advantage. The second advantage is that the industry which is taking up the waste will save on the raw material cost. So previously, without these connections, that second industry will rely on virgin raw material to meet the raw material demands. But now if it is taking waste from another industry, that waste will most likely be available at a cheaper rate, and therefore the industry will also save money on raw material. And of course, from an environmental standpoint, there are going to be benefits, because it doesn't matter how much you treat waste, you still generate some waste which is going to be harmful. So there is going to be an overall efficiency in terms of waste management, material use, energy use, and so on. So that is the concept of industrial ecology. So let me now, since I have given this concept, again the concept as such is not very difficult to understand. The basic idea, as I said, is to connect waste industry from one stream as a resource or input for another industry. So just to reinforce this point, I will give you two examples. The first one is from Denmark. It's the Kalundborg Industrial Estate. And it's a very popular example in industrial ecology or industrial symbiosis. So this picture here shows a simplified diagram of the industrial cluster which has been developed at Kalundborg. And it shows the various industries that are connected with each other, and also the connections, as in what is being transferred. So you will see that at the center of this industrial cluster is a power station, and there are many other industries. So there is a refinery, there is a fertilizer production unit, there is a wallboard plant, there is of course the municipality of Kalundborg, which requires heating and wastewater treatment. Those are the requirements. There is a cement manufacturing company, and there is a pharmaceutical company, Novozymes, and there are other things also, fish farming and so on. So these are the main industries that are part of this industrial cluster, and you see that there are several connections between these multiple industries. So if I look at the power plant, you will see that the excess steam that is generated in the power plant is used by the refinery. Similarly, wastewater that is generated by the refinery is used by the power plant. The boiler water, after the condensation, the boiler water that is available is connected to the refinery, and that is used by the refinery for its heating application. So it is like a heat integration that we do in chemical process industries. Uh, on the other side, the fly ash that is generated, if you are burning coal, for example, you will generate fly ash. So that fly ash is being sent for cement manufacturing company or cement manufacturing. Again, excess steam is sent to a pharmaceutical company. The yeast slurry that is generated by the pharmaceutical company and the sludge that is generated by the pharma company is sent to farms for fertilizers, and so on. So there is heat connection at multiple places. The sulfur that is generated at the refinery is sent to the liquid fertilizer production, and so on. So you can see that there are a lot of connections that are developed between these various industries, and therefore this is an excellent example of the application of industrial ecology concept uh, in a real industrial sector. Now, what are the benefits of implementing this? There are several benefits. So this is a more detailed figure which shows the connections, flow rates, and so on. This is taken up from this particular website, so you can look at the website in more detail. In fact, we can look at the website here. So this is the website that gives additional details about this cluster, and you can see this is an animation that shows what are the different industries and what are the connection. This is all written in Danish, so it's not available in English. The website itself is in English, but this figure in Danish. So these are the different connections of energy. So these pink lines show different connections of energy, so it could be like steam and so on. Blue lines are for water. So I told you there are several places where hot water or boiler feed water, cooling water are exchanged. And the green lines are material. So this could be like sulfur, yeast, fly ash, and so on. So there are more details available on this website. You can also find about other things related to this particular initiative, the different awards that this particular cluster has been given, and so on. So the overall benefits, there are several benefits. One is the yearly CO2 reduction is to the tune of 240,000 tons. These, of course, these numbers may have been updated. I don't claim that these are the most recent numbers, but these are what are available in the literature that is available in public domain. There is net saving of 3 million meter cube of water through recycling and reuse. 30,000 tons of straw is converted into ethanol. 150,000 tons of yeast replaces 70% of soy protein in traditional feed for pigs. Recycling of 150 tons of gypsum from desulfurization of flue gases replaces import of natural gypsum. So you can see that in addition to the cost, there are a lot of other benefits, environmental benefit, and that is primarily the motivation for setting up this kind of a cluster. This is again summary of some other benefits of waste avoided through the interchange. This is the fly ash and clinkers are avoided. They are used by something else: scrubber, sludge, sulfur, sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, and so on. Also the annual resources saving, this again I have covered to a certain extent. So you can look at additional publications or the website for more details about this scheme. I would like to present one more example in the Indian context, which is from Karnataka. So this is the Nanjagud industrial area, and there have been some reports that have come out based on this area. This particular figure is taken from this report, and there are also journal articles available on this particular case study. So this particular industrial cluster is focusing on food industry, so or biological material. So there is a food processing facility which is connected to oil extraction facility. So the boiler fuel from the oil extraction facility is sent to food processing facility. Spent coffee from the food processing facility is sent for oil extraction facility. Sawdust is connecting plywood manufacturing to oil extraction facility. Again, there is connection between boiler fuel and so on. So this and another interesting important connection is related to sugar refinery and distillery. So sugar refinery, press mud is going to distillery, the molasses that are generated in sugar mills are sent to the distillery, CO2 that is generated in the distillery is sent for CO2 bottling facility, and so on. So this is an example of industrial ecology application in the Indian context. Similar to the case of Kalundborg, the benefit of this particular industrial cluster has also been quantified, and this is reported again in several publications. This pie chart on the left shows the final disposal of all the waste generated in this particular cluster facilities. So you can say that 81% of the waste that is generated is reused within the facility. So whatever connections that are developed, 81% of the waste is internally used. 13% is symbiotic exchange and so on. Only 0.5% is disposed, and some of it is going for informal marketing, recycling, and so on. So you can see that there is a significant benefit of implementing this industrial ecology approach in this cluster. The bar charts on the right show the destination of recycled residues leaving generating facilities in NIA. That is the name of the cluster, Nanjangud Industrial Area. So you can see that most of the food residues that are generated, which is the red bar here, are used within the NIA facility. Then most of the other material is actually used within 20 kilometers of the cluster, and only a small fraction, if you see compared to these bars, these are very small bars, only a small fraction is actually going beyond 20 kilometers. So the industrial cluster is able to handle all these waste in a very efficient manner, in a localized manner. Now again, industrial ecology is a very exciting concept, but it doesn't mean that there are no challenges. Just like any other approach that we have seen so far, there are also some challenges that we need to address related to industrial ecology. So these are listed here. First of all, it is important to have a diverse set of industries at a single location. If you have all industries who are doing pretty much the same thing, then you cannot have the connection between two different industries, because the waste for one industry is going to be waste for all the other industries also. So you need to have diversity. In all the two examples that we have seen, there is a lot of diversity ranging from power plants, pharma company, a refinery, fertilizer company, greenhouses, and so on. So there is a lot of diversity, and you need that. Otherwise, you cannot actually make these connections. Secondly, designing these connections and making it reality is going to require infrastructure development, because you need to set up these connections. Right now I'm showing these in terms of arrows, but obviously if you are going to connect water or steam from one industry to another, you need the related piping infrastructure. If you are going to move fly ash from the power station to the cement manufacturing facility, you need the necessary infrastructure. So that is a challenge, or that costs money. So you need to set up that infrastructure. The third thing is you need to ensure quality and processing purification requirement. So it is quite nice to say that waste of one industry is used as raw material by another industry, but it is not always necessary that the waste is up to the required quality. Maybe the waste has certain impurities that are highly undesirable for the other industry to use. So in that case, you need to do some purification. Maybe some processing still needs to be done. So it's going to be rare that you have a perfect combination where the waste can directly be used by the second industry, and in that case you need to have that proper quality and purification assurity. The fourth challenge is to ensure that there is product flow reliability and maintenance. So for example, most process industries will have a maintenance shutdown. So when the maintenance shutdown is there, the downstream industry should not suffer. because there is no raw material available, because the waste, if the industry is shut down, the waste generation will reduce or it will go to zero, and therefore the raw material cannot be generated for the second industry. So that will have to be taken care of. Maybe the required buffer stock needs to be managed and so on. The other thing is some sort of related, is that it's possible that the waste that is being generated by one industry does not fulfill all the requirement of the second industry. So maybe it fills only 20% or 30% of the requirement, while the rest 70% has to be met anyway by virgin raw material. Now these virgin raw material and the waste would be of different compositions, different quality. So you need different kinds of processing, different handling systems. So that will make the process plant or the manufacturing facility more complicated to design as well as manage. So that will have to be carefully handled. The fifth challenge is sending the right kind of waste from one component to another. And let me go back to the Kalundborg example again. Here you will see that if you talk about steam, now steam is from the power plant is going to the pharma company, it is going to the refinery. Similarly, heat is going to fish farming and so on. So there are several connections for a particular flow. So heat, for example, is going to fish farming as well as district heating. And so on. So you need to decide how much should go where, and that's not a very easy problem to solve, because as the number of options increase, you have that many more possibilities. So let's say you are generating steam and there are 3 or 4 different users of steam. You have to decide how much of the steam that is generated should go to which particular industry. Whether all of that should go to one industry, or should they be distributed in some manner. So deciding that and doing that calculation is going to be a challenge, and that requires systematic calculations. The final challenge is ensuring financial feasibility, because you can say that this kind of a cluster is very beneficial for the environment, because you are reducing the waste generation and so on. But ultimately every industry is a standalone industry, so it has to be financially profitable. So when you do these kind of connections, you also have to ensure that the industry which is, let's say, taking the waste from another industry is not financially affected because of that. From a financial standpoint, it still continues to function and the profits are generated. If that doesn't happen, the industry will actually not participate in this kind of a cluster. So ensuring the financial feasibility is important. So if you look at the industrial ecology literature, you will see that many of these challenges can actually be solving many of these challenges require systematic analysis, and there is a lot of application of theory of optimization in this particular field. So for example, the problem of identifying which is the right place to send a particular waste, at what rate should the waste be sent, what is the cost required for it, what are the cost implications, and so on. So that as the number of options increase, it becomes difficult to identify the right combination, and therefore optimization has been very commonly used in solving these design problems. So it becomes a design problem. You have to consciously come up with a design that can ensure that these connections are functional, viable, and so on. So there is significant, if you look at, for example, Journal of Industrial Ecology, which is a journal dedicated to this kind of research, you will see a lot of papers that have used optimization as an approach to solve these design problems. So with that, I will conclude this summary or this introduction to industrial ecology. In this video, I will give an example of the application of industrial ecology for a simple case of a sugar mill in the Indian context. In the previous video, I explained the concept of industrial ecology, which is about utilizing waste of one industry as a raw material for another industry. And I told you that designing such an industrial cluster is a challenging task, and optimization is very commonly used to perform this task. So this example actually uses the approach of optimization to design an industrial cluster based on sugar mill. So to give you a brief background why we were interested in this particular topic. So sugarcane bagasse is a very valuable resource for bio-based economy in India. If you think about the total sugarcane production, India is the second largest producer of sugarcane globally behind Brazil. And because there is so much sugarcane production, when sugar is crushed in sugar mills, it generates a lot of bagasse. So this number keeps changing based on the sugarcane plantation, but the point here is that you have millions of tons of sugarcane bagasse that is available on an annual basis in India. And the current utilization of bagasse is not very efficient. So what happens in most cases is if the sugar mill is large enough, then it can generate electricity from the sugar mill, so it can have a cogeneration plant. The electricity that is generated is used by the mill itself as well as it is sold to the grid. Some of the medium-sized mills set up boilers or use this bagasse in boilers so that the process heat required in sugar refining can be met. But even after these applications, there is often excess bagasse available. Moreover, many of the small industries do not have the necessary capital required to set up either the biomass-based boiler or cogeneration plant. And in those cases, the bagasse is just wasted. So it's a big problem. It's a lost revenue because you are losing some material, plus there is a waste hazard. So there is a potential to retrofit existing sugar mills for efficient utilization of bagasse, and there can possibly be economic, environmental as well as social benefits. So that was the motivation behind this problem. So the research question that we wanted to answer was, what is the optimal model of utilization of bagasse? Remember, I told you in the previous video that in addition to deciding this connection, you also need to decide how much should be used where. So we started by looking at three different possibilities. So you have bagasse, which is generated after sugar is crushed. You can produce ethanol. So there is a lot of interest right now in producing ethanol from lignocellulosic materials like bagasse, and ethanol can actually be blended with petrol. So this is a very important problem to solve. There is in India and globally as well, there is a lot of interest in converting lignocellulose to ethanol. So that is one possibility. Second possibility is to use bagasse to generate process heat like steam generation in boiler. And third is to use bagasse to generate value-added products. And these could be specialty chemicals like levulinic acid or seringaldehyde, vanillin, or succinic acid, lactic acid, and so on. So this was the problem that we wanted to solve. Additionally, we realized that sugarcane trash is another resource that we can potentially use for this purpose. So trash is the material that is left on the farm when the sugarcane is harvested. So these are basically the sugarcane leaves and tops that are typically cut at the farm, and then the rest of the sugarcane is brought to the mill. So trash is also lignocellulosic material, and therefore it can possibly be used for all these applications. So that was the question we wanted to answer. How much of bagasse and trash should go where? And we said that we need to ensure two things. One is that the process heat requirement of the facility should be met. So if on the previous slide I told you that many mills actually use this bagasse to generate process heat. Now it's possible that you divert all the bagasse to produce ethanol, but then the process heat will still need to be met, and that is met by burning natural gas. That doesn't actually that is not a correct approach, because you are then replacing a renewable energy source with a non-renewable energy source. So we wanted to ensure that the process heat requirement is met, but the excess bagasse can either be used for ethanol production or other value-added production. Similarly, the other question that we wanted to answer was, can sugarcane trash support the bagasse utilization, which I've already explained. So we developed a flowchart for an integrated facility around an existing sugar mill. So you have sugarcane that comes into the mill, and this is the mill where the sugarcane is crushed, and you get you get sucrose, which is sent for further processing. Now, since this is not part of our analysis, this was not considered this was not modeled explicitly. But when you do the sugarcane crushing, you get bagasse. There are two ways you can use bagasse. One is boiler, which is what happens currently, that you have bagasse is sent to boiler where it is burnt and you get steam. You can also augment the boiler operations with trash, as I have explained on the previous slide. The other option is to use this bagasse to produce ethanol, which is the final product of this particular processing route. The ethanol production itself has multiple steps like pre-hydrolysis, pre-treatment, saccharification, which is hydrolysis, fermentation, and so on. Now the interesting thing about bagasse is that it's a lignocellulosic material and it has mainly three components: cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. Now out of these, only cellulose and hemicellulose can be used for ethanol production. Lignin is not used for ethanol production. But one good thing about lignin is that it can be used as a energy source. In fact, in many paper mills, lignin is used as an energy source. It is simply burnt. So pre-treatment, there are pre-treatments that are available that can separate lignin. So lignin can also be burnt in boiler. So boiler can have three different feeds: bagasse, trash, and lignin. But there is also an option of valorizing lignin to specialty chemicals like vanillin and seringaldehyde. So these are chemicals that are of high demand, high value, and therefore you can convert lignin into some of these products. So all these places where this bifurcation are options available for selection. So bagasse can be used at two different places. If you are sending bagasse through pre-treatment, you will get lignin. Lignin can either be sent to boiler or for value-added production. So in order to decide what should actually happen, we developed an optimization model to solve this problem. Now I am not going to go into the details of the optimization model because that's outside the scope of the topic. But to briefly summarize, each of these boxes were modeled as using mass balance equations and energy balance equations, and the problem was developed. So the main features of the optimization problem were: the objective function was to minimize the cost of ethanol, break-even selling price of ethanol, or BESP as we call it. So this is the minimum price at which you must sell ethanol in order to have break even. So you can, in other words, you can say that this is the production cost of ethanol. The decision variables were bagasse and lignin distribution. So how much bagasse should go where and how much lignin should go where. Also trash utilization. So if do you want to use trash? If yes, then how much? So these were the key decision variables. So if you are familiar with optimization, you will know some of these terms. This is a mixed integer linear programming problem with 114 variables, 110 constraints, and we used GAMS as the software to solve the problem, to develop the problem. It was solved using a specific solver. So the model was applied to a typical sugar mill in India. We assumed the sugarcane processing is 181 tons per hour. This mg stands for megagram, so that is metric tons per hour. So this is the average capacity of a typical Indian sugar mill. The bagasse content in 1 kg of sugar mill or 1 ton of sugar mill is about 12.3%. 50% of trash, we assume that only 50% of the trash on the farms is available for utilization, because the rest is either kept on the field for soil enrichment. The ethanol process was modeled based on information from literature, and the raw material and chemical costs were taken from literature again. So this is the base case solution. So the break-even selling price of ethanol was rupees 63 per liter, and the cost breakup is shown here. But the more important point for us in the context of this particular, from an industrial ecology context, the important result is how much of bagasse is used where. So what the model recommended was that 36% of bagasse should go to boiler, and the remaining about 64% should go for ethanol production. So going back to this particular flow chart, 36% goes to boiler directly, remaining 64% goes for ethanol production. Now, when you are sending some bagasse to ethanol production, you are also generating lignin. So the next question is what to do with that lignin. And the optimal recommendation was that all lignin should go to the boiler, or most of it, 82%, and some of the other lignin can be sold. The remaining 17.4% is simply sold. So the conversion of lignin to these value-added chemicals was not at all economically feasible. It is better to just sell lignin instead as an energy source, like biomass, for example. Lignin to vanillin or cinnamaldehyde were zero. So this result is of greater interest in the context of the topic that we are covering. Now, if you think about this, and if you wanted to come up with this combination by trial and error, you will quickly realize that it's going to be very difficult, and that's the value of using optimization as a tool. Then we said, okay, what if the trash utilization changes? Okay, so in the base case that I discussed, 50% trash was utilized, and the rest 50% was left on the field. Now, if I want to reduce the cost of ethanol from 63 rupees per liter, one option is to send more bagasse to ethanol production so that I can achieve economy of scale. But if I divert more bagasse to ethanol production, there is a shortage of bagasse for steam generation, and I will need some other fuel. And that some other fuel could be trash. So trash again is a renewable resource, so it is an acceptable alternative. So we decided to change the amount of trash that you can use from base case, which was 50%, to the complete range, so 0%. So this x-axis shows percentage trash retained on farm. So when you say 0% trash retained on farm, that means all the trash is used in the boiler. On the other extreme, when we say 100% trash retained on farms, that means trash is not available for utilization and you have to meet the energy demand in the boiler by bagasse only. Now what you see here is that as you keep more and more trash on the field, you have to divert more and more bagasse to the boiler, and therefore the cost of ethanol production increases, and that is because of lack of economy of scale. So as you are moving in this direction, there is less and less bagasse that is going for ethanol processing, and therefore the capital investment is not optimally utilized, and therefore the per unit cost, so y-axis is per unit cost or break-even selling price of ethanol, it keeps rising. So in this extreme case, it is around 120 rupees per liter. The best case scenario is when you use all trash, so there is no trash left on the field, everything you use for sugar mill boiler. So you can divert maximum bagasse to ethanol production, and there your cost can reduce to up to 56 rupees per liter. So this gives you the range of what is an achievable break-even selling price. So this is the comparison. So when you have 0% trash utilization, the quantity of bagasse that you can send for ethanol production goes down from about 64% to only 23%, and lot of bagasse has to be sent to boiler to meet the energy demand. And there are correspondingly other changes. The ethanol production goes down significantly, and as I mentioned previously, the cost increases to around 117 rupees per liter. So based on this, from a purely economic standpoint, it makes sense to use as much trash as we can, because that helps reducing the cost of ethanol production. But unfortunately, that's only part of the story. Because there is a reason why trash is normally kept on the field. So trash or sugarcane leaves have certain nutrients, and if you leave the trash on the field, it degrades on the field and the nutrients go back to the soil, and therefore there are environmental benefits. So there is soil enrichment that is happening because you have left the trash on the field. So these numbers are given, these are again from literature, but up to 40 kg of nitrogen recovery from 100% retention, 40 to 75 kg of potassium per hectare for 100% trash retention, and so on. And what this means is that if you have so much nutrient that is added naturally to the soil, you avoid the fertilizer utilization in the next season, which, thinking from a life cycle perspective, gives you benefit of avoided impact due to fertilizer production. If you are not using that much fertilizer, you can say that you have saved so much emissions related to fertilizer production. There is also going to be an economic benefit because the farmer will avoid the cost of fertilization. The other benefit is going to be the government because fertilizers are highly subsidized in our country. So if the fertilizer use goes down, the subsidy burden also goes down for the government. So there is going to be some economic benefit also by retaining trash on the field. So we wanted to see what is that benefit. So this is what we see. So if you retain more and more trash, again the x-axis is percentage trash retention on the farm. So as you retain more and more trash, your fertilizer requirement goes down, and therefore there is a benefit in terms of cost saved in fertilization. This is in rupees per hectare. So based on whether you have subsidy or no subsidy, there is a difference. But you can say that the benefit is about 8,000 to 8,500 rupees per hectare. Now, unfortunately, if I translate that into savings in liters per ethanol, it only gives me about 3 rupees per liter saving in ethanol. So purely from ethanol production standpoint, this is not a significant benefit, because if I retain all the trash on the field, your production cost is 117. That will go down to 114 if I take into account these additional benefits of avoided fertilization. So it's not a very big benefit purely from an economic standpoint. However, there is another angle which we haven't looked at, which is the water angle. When you retain trash on farm field, there is also some survey studies or some experiments that have shown that the net water holding capacity of the soil goes up, and therefore the irrigation water requirement goes down. And that's going to be a significant benefit in the Indian context, because sugar mills, sugar production is very water intensive, and therefore if you can get that benefit, then it may actually lead to significant cost savings. But that is something we haven't looked at in this work. As I said, there are going to be environmental benefits because of trash retention, and this is captured here. So you can say kg of CO2 equivalent on y-axis. Again, x-axis shows percentage retention on farm. As you retain more and more, there is more benefit because of avoided fertilizer production. So once this study was done, then we extended the scope of the analysis to consider two more options to utilize bagasse. We previously had ethanol and process heat, but we now added electricity production and pellets production. Now pellet production is a very low tech option because pelletization machines are very simple technologies, not very capital intensive. Electricity production, on the other hand, cogeneration, is very capital intensive and may not be possible for small industries. But we still wanted to see what happens if you have now four options. And additionally, we wanted to know, are there any economic and environmental trade-offs, and does it help to consider a regionally integrated system? So again, looking at it from an industrial ecology perspective, if I have several sugar mills, can I actually develop some kind of a cluster considering these four products? So the original model was extended. I will not go into the details, but earlier the only option was to produce ethanol or vanillin or seringaldehyde. So that was the route that I have already explained. Additionally, we included three more options. One was pelletization. Second was electricity production. So these two were added. And the fourth option was not really a process option, but just the option of selling bagasse to the market, to let's say a pellet manufacturing facility or paper making facility who may use bagasse. So these were the options that were added, and the boiler again can use bagasse, trash, and if possible lignin as a source. Now each of these routes were modeled in detail. I have already explained the ethanol production route, which is shown here. But the electricity production was based on IGCC technology. The reference is given here. And there are multiple steps. If you generate electricity, it also generates useful process heat, which can be used to meet heat requirements of the sugar mill. So there is electricity as a product, there is electricity to the grid, and there is process heat that is generated. The pelletization process generates pellets which go through this process. There is some size reduction, cooling, the actual pellet making, cooling, and so on. So the optimization model was again extended to include these additional options. From an economic standpoint, we considered the capital and operating costs. In order to keep the model linear, we did piecewise linearization of capital cost functions. From an environmental standpoint, we looked at two impacts. One was greenhouse gas emissions and second was water footprint. And this was in addition to cost. Now we also wanted to consider the avoided impacts, because if you are producing electricity from this particular process, then this is renewable electricity because it is produced from bagasse, which is a renewable resource. And in India, most of the electricity is produced from fossil source. About 60 to 65% comes from coal, some from natural gas, and so on. So if you replace the existing electricity, which is mostly fossil based, from or by a renewable electricity, then there has to be some benefit. That is the concept of avoided impact that we have seen in life cycle assessment. So we wanted to quantify those avoided impacts as well. So these were considered as follows: electricity replaces grid electricity, ethanol replaces petrol, so whatever ethanol we are producing will replace petrol, and therefore those emissions are avoided. And we are assuming that pellets will replace biomass or firewood based cooking. So we assume that pellets are mainly used for cooking and they will replace firewood. So we had three different objectives: maximization of economic benefits or NPV, minimization of greenhouse gas emissions, and minimization of water. The decision variables again were bagasse, trash, and lignin distribution, and these are the model related details. So we again took the same facility of 181 tons per metric tons per hour. Base case was again 50% trash retention, and these were the prices that we had assumed. So here we solved the problem a little differently. In the previous case, we said what is the minimum price at which you want to sell ethanol. Here we said that the prices are fixed. What is the most optimal option given the prices? So electricity price was assumed as the typical price that is available if you are selling electricity. The ethanol price at that time, the refinery gate price that was proposed was 39 rupees per liter. So this work was done about 3 to 4 years ago. So that time the government recommended price for refinery gate was 39 rupees per liter. Pellet price, we looked at the literature or the price trends, and it varied anywhere between 7 to 17 rupees per kg. So we assumed a price of 9 rupees per kg, and bagasse we assumed is sold at 2 rupees per kg. And these were the avoided impacts. So remember, I told you that if you use a product that is generated, it is replacing a fossil based product, so there is some benefit. So if you use bagasse for ethanol production, the avoided benefit is minus 0.13, because you are so this is the net reduction in GHG emissions. You will see that there is a lot of reduction in GHG emission in electricity, and that's because our existing electricity production is fossil based. So when you replace fossil based with renewable, you get significant benefit. That's why this number is significantly negative per kilowatt hour. And similarly for pellets, this is the same logic for water. Actually, water production is higher, so that's one thing that you have to note, that anytime you use biomass based resource, the water footprint typically is quite high. So from a water standpoint, you actually have a positive footprint, and this is related to the boiler. So these are the results. So what we found, that if you want to maximize the net present value or maximize or minimize the greenhouse gas emission, the optimal decision is to set up a power plant. So this is still the 181 tons per hour sugar mill, and in that sugar mill the optimal route is to set up a power plant of this particular capacity. And this is the distribution of bagasse. So all the bagasse will go to electricity. Now you might question what happens to the heat requirement, because some bagasse was previously used for heat generation. Now I told you in the flow chart for the electricity production, there is residual or waste heat generated. So that waste heat could actually be used in the sugar mill. So you can divert all the bagasse to electricity production. All the trash was used, or whatever maximum was available was used for electricity production, and this is the net present value. And there is a significant reduction in GHG footprint because we are replacing grid electricity with renewable electricity. And this is the corresponding water footprint. If you want to minimize water footprint, the solution is to just sell bagasse, because then you don't do anything. Everything else requires water, and therefore if you want to minimize water, just sell bagasse, and then it is outside the scope of your calculation. And these are the corresponding numbers. So there was no trade-off between net present value and GHG footprint, but there was a strong trade-off between net present value, GHG footprint, and water footprint. So we solved a multi-objective optimization problem where we understood the trade-offs. So you have one extreme where GHG footprint is minimized and the NPV is maximum, which was when you produce electricity. At the other extreme, you sell all the bagasse, and you have solutions in between. So you have different combinations of bagasse and trash utilization as you move from point F to point A. And this is captured here. So at point F, all the bagasse goes to electricity and all the trash also goes to electricity. At the other extreme, all the bagasse is sold and trash goes to boiler. And at in between points, you have some combination between these two extremes. So these are the so we wanted to know at what point does the solution change. So we realized that the selling price of ethanol has to be at least 69 rupees per liter before ethanol production becomes profitable for this industry, for this sugar mill. Similarly, the pellet production has to go up to 20 rupees per kg before pellet manufacturing becomes profitable. And if you want ethanol and pellet both, then the prices have to go significantly high. So it shows that there is a significant region where electricity production continues to be the most profitable option. So then we wanted to look at the industrial ecology angle. So going beyond a single industry and look at multiple industries put together. What is the benefit of that? So this is where the industrial ecology concept really comes in. So we looked at Kolhapur region in Maharashtra, where there are a lot of sugar mills. We could identify 31 sugar mills with varying capacities between 62 tons per hour to 325 tons per hour processing. So here what we assume, the same options are there, but here the only difference is that the mills could exchange materials. So bagasse generated in one mill doesn't have to be used in the same mill. You can do bagasse aggregation at a single location and then do something with it. So this is what we got. So this is a comparison between non-integrated solution. So if all the 31 mills were to do things on their own, whether pelletization, ethanol production, electricity production, or so on, if they are not integrated, what happens? And if they are integrated, what happens? So the broad message is, there is regional integration, there is increase in total net present value by 37%. So this is the benefit of industrial ecology that we are getting. 37% increase in the net present value. Now going back to the non-integrated solution, if there is no integration, smaller mills, the recommendation was smaller mills less than 75 tons per hour should sell bagasse. Mills with intermediate capacity should have a power plant and bagasse sold to market. Mills with higher than 150 tons per hour should have only power plant. And the total net present value was 870 billion rupees. The integrated solution on the other hand recommended that you aggregate the bagasse at two mills and have two big power plants with total capacity of 751 megawatts. The remaining mills use bagasse in boiler and send it so they meet their own requirements by using bagasse in the boiler, and whatever is excess is sent to these two mills where the power plants are set up. And the total benefit, as I have already said, is 37%. There is also benefit on the break-even prices. So because you have an integrated setup, all the production processes become more efficient. So you can see that the ethanol production option becomes profitable at a much lower price. So if your selling price is 49 rupees, ethanol production is feasible. Similarly, if your selling price of pellet is 13 rupees, it becomes feasible. Previously this was 69 and this was 19. So because of the integration, you can set up larger plants and there is benefit in terms of producing more expensive product. And there are other combinations that could also be identified. So the overall conclusion of this study was that we looked at the possibility of using bagasse waste that is generated in a sugar mill to produce various products. We started with only two options of ethanol and value-added chemicals and of course process heat. At that point, the observation was that the break-even selling price is 63 rupees per liter. Trash utilization affected the break-even selling price significantly. When we looked at the integrated model where additional options were given for bagasse utilization, we found that electricity production minimizes GHG footprint as well as maximizes the net present value, but that is not what you should do for water footprint minimization. And more importantly, or most importantly, if you have regional integration of these mills, you can save up to 37%, or you can improve your net present value by up to 37%, and there were GHG and water footprint benefits as well. So these were the key conclusions of this work. If you are interested more in learning more about this work, these are the publications from this work is already published. These are the two papers that have been published. I would recommend you to find more. If you need to find more details, you can go to these papers and find out the additional details. Thank you.